At one point in time, being a celebrity meant that you were actually protected by the law, that DAs and police would like look the other way, and since they were fans of your work, they didn't want you to get bad press, and a lot of stuff would just kind of get brushed under the rug.
Right.
But these days, I feel it's the exact opposite. I feel that if you're a celebrity and you get charged for anything, suddenly it turns into a RICO. Suddenly it's a whole huge situation. And I feel that clout chasing has been happening with DAs and the feds more so than any time in history. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, if you go back about 30 years when the internet sort of was in its infancy, a lot of the stuff that happened before that, you can correctly say that it didn't happen. Like when I was at college in the 80s, football players could get drunk or whatever, the cops would take them back to the dorm, let them sleep them off.
Right.
Now everybody wants a scalp. Just because everybody's got a phone, everything's reported 24/7. Remember, CNN was just coming around and all that kind of stuff. So if you go back 30 years, you can directly see when everybody wants to be famous now. I got this guy, I'm going to be DA of the year because I got somebody famous.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to be super defense lawyer because I got somebody acquitted. And the internet, social media has changed the perspective of everything. And now everybody decides they know if you're guilty, innocent, whatever it is, you're not going to change their mind. I think it's made it harder to get fair trials, but that's just the world we live in.
Well, and I feel a lot of these trials fall apart. You saw, for example, your trial is an example of one.
Sure.
With the Hernandez Govan trial. You saw A$AP Rocky beat his case.
Sure.
My man Joe Tacopino, we interviewed him about that. Of course, the YSL case. I've interviewed, a couple lawyers. Well, I interviewed Yak Gotti's lawyer who ended up winning in trial with a non-guilty verdict. Like these cases with these huge overreaching RICOs and gang ties and so forth, once it gets down to the jury, a lot of times these guys are being found not guilty. And there's millions of dollars that's spent in government money, whether it's the feds or the state, that ultimately just gets thrown out the window. It's a waste of everyone's time.
Well, if the defendants didn't have the money to challenge it, you would never say that because we'd never find out.
True.
So there's a lot of people. Remember that indictment for YSL started off with 30 some odd people or some outrageous number. Most of them pled guilty. And so if you have money, if you have resources, or if you have a lawyer willing to put in the time, you could find.
Well, Young Thug pled guilty.
Yeah.
If you think about it.
Right.
But so did Gunna.
Right. And
the two biggest people pled guilty. So technically it was a win, but not really.
Right. But at that point, you're looking at 40, 50 years in prison. I mean, I'm going to sign the piece of paper. I mean, this is not a racial issue, but if you're a minority and I go to the jails to visit folks, they've been sitting there a year because they can't post bond or they don't have a bond. And the DA, through their public defender or their appointed lawyer, come in and say, well, we'll give him probation if he signs here. Now they've got you on paper for 5 or 10 years.
Yeah.
And the whole cycle starts. And most of the lawyers don't have the time in trying to make a living, be it public defenders or appointed lawyers, because you have to do so much. In the old days, just a few years ago, you're getting $40 to $50 an hour as an appointed lawyer. You can't make a living on that as far as that goes. So it's all bleed and plead as fast as you can. And if you can get probation, bleed and plead.
Wow,
get as
I've
much
never
money
heard
as you
that
can
before.
and plead it out because you need volume.
Bleed and plead.
Yeah.
Wow.
If you talk to just the average lawyer on the street as a criminal defense lawyer, they're not making much money. This isn't a very lucrative profession. You have the good fortune to meet with some of the higher end folks that are being hired by fancy musicians and stuff like that. But that's the overwhelming minority, less than 0.5% of lawyers that can afford to do these kinds of things. But the average guy, if you just went, down the street and there's some strip mall lawyer, not like a Better Call Saul kind of stuff, they're running 300 and 400 cases. How much attention do you think one guy can give to that? And that's the reality of it. The guy running the food trailer out here, if he got in trouble, he's done.
Yeah, I feel you, man. I feel you. I'm going through a case right now. My lawyer is $950 an hour.
Whew.
And it's like, who could afford a lawyer like that aside of someone who actually has means?
Right.
Most people would have just dropped the case and walked away.
Right.
But the fact that I have the money and I could afford one of the top lawyers is a game changer. But most people end up just taking losses and pleading out and just giving up.
Yes.
Because most people just can't afford a proper defense. And on the flip side, people who get sued civilly are dealing with lawyers who take these cases on contingency. I don't know if you saw the whole argument with me and Tony Busby.
Yeah.
where I was just sort of sickened by someone who claims they have 100 victims that have all been drugged and raped by Diddy.
Yeah.
But yet none of these victims were involved in the Fed case. One of which, claimed that Diddy and Jay-Z raped her when she was 13. Her own father said it was nonsense. The case was thrown out. Busby was sanctioned in New York and so forth. So it's just a system that I'm not always a fan of, which is why I try to bring in the top lawyers to kind of bring some clarity to the whole situation. And you're the latest of that top lawyer list.
Well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And, good job with Hernandez, man. Wish you all the best.
Okay.
Take care. Peace.